just had names of some of these ancestors, and it's out of the Elders Cemetery, and I've had all of their names put on it. I almost forgot my own mother's dad. I had to go back and tell them to put that on. Now, I'd like to thank you for coming, and I hope that you will enjoy our peoples and places and buildings. Is that it? Well, the first thing I'd like to point out is our Seven Springs Schoolhouse. And it was built in 1913 and was used as a school for a short time and given to the West Pasco Historical Society by Alex Acey. And it was moved to Sims Park in October of 1981 and is now the home of the West Pasco Historical Society and museum and library. And it was dedicated in 1983. And to go with back with some of the buildings and things, that I'm sure those of you who have been around here are familiar with a lot of them. I always had it in my head that this was the Barnett home. But I found out in later years that I was wrong. Barnett was across the street. But this was the Hugh Osborne residence, and it is now the home of Holden Investigations. And he restored that building with great pain and a lot of expense to get it back to its original thing. But he didn't put the picket fence around it, did he? No. I didn't think he did, but he did put a few other things. But Mr. Osborne was the editor of the Newport Richey Press.
Where did that building stand?
Where?
Where is it located?
Down on Grand Boulevard. Delaware.
Delaware and Grand? Thank you.
And he spoke with us a while back. He came here and spoke with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, this gets into a little bit of family history here. This is the home that my grandfather, James W. Clark, built in 1889. And he was the first permanent settler in Fort Ritchie. He came here in 1872, followed his cattle down from, he came to Brooksville first, and he followed his cattle down. They kept moving away from Brooksville. Of course, at that time there were no fences, and the cattle had to, they just wandered, and they had to go out and round them up and bring them back. And he did, the third time he had to do that, he says, can't lick them, I'll join them. So he moved to Fort Ritchie, married one of the Hope from Brooksville. She was born in Brooksville. But he came from South Carolina, where after he served in the Confederate Army for about 4 years, I think it was. And when he was discharged, he had met a man named Mr. Malcolm Hill, and they became good friends. And he didn't want to go back to South Carolina, so he came to Florida, where the thing to do in those days was raise cattle and citrus. So that's what he wanted to do. But he got as far as Brooksville, and of course the cattle decided they wouldn't stay there. They'd come on down the banks of the river. I always wondered about that. The only thing I could think of, it was cooler on the banks of the river because they couldn't drink the water. So, but anyway, he would, the only way they could keep up with their cattle in those days was to just round them up and mark them and brand them with their brand. But he built, the year my father was born, they were living in a little log house across the street. And of course, that's the way I remembered this house. It was built in 1889. It was the same year my father was born, and he was hoping he'd get the house finished in time for the birth of the son. That was their youngest son. He also built the first school out in his groves, which is in the Pine Hill area now. That's where he had planted his groves after he came. And it was just a little, very small one-room home building. And in 1948, it was still standing there. My father took us out and showed it to us. And one of my uncles said that, he said it was so small that you couldn't have a fire inside. When it was cold weather, they had to just build a fire outside so they could warm their hands. The last time I went out that way, the school bus barn is there now, so that gives you an idea of where it was. He was appointed county commissioner by Governor Francis Fleming in 1891 and became postmaster in 1892 after Mr. Ritchie moved to Tarpon Springs on account of his health. But he had been postmaster of Hopeville, which was the community established for people to live when the salt works were in operation during the Civil War. And they established a little community called Hopeville, and he was the postmaster of that post office in 1878. But he lived in Fort Ritchie the rest of his life. He passed away in 1913. This is not going to be strictly a family thing, but this building, David changed it. We had to change it for reasons that only he knows.
Right. Just to confuse you.
Yeah, okay. I had to remember. Yeah, this building was built by James W. Clark Jr. And those of you who have the list of mayors in your West Pasco heritage, it gives the mayors listed as James W. Clark the first time and James W. Clark Jr. the second time. But the city had not become a city until 1924, and my grandfather Clark died in 1913, so we know that it was always, in both times, James W. Clark Jr. that built that building was the one that was mayor twice in Newport Ritchie. You can't tell, this building is still standing too, but it's called the Coral Reef. And it's all plastered over. They had nice apartments upstairs. I can remember going up there. With a nice back porch across the back. And during the Depression, my uncle had built a nice home on Grand Boulevard. But during the Depression, he closed that house up to cut down on expenses and moved upstairs here. And another family that he let stay up there during the Depression was the Grays, Frank Gray and Mary. He was also the first fire chief in Newport Ritchie after it was organized. And the Baker House was built, this is the Baker House, and it was built in 1882 by Samuel Baker. And a lot of you know about the Baker House. And where it is, down on Loop Road by the library and the art center. And it's the oldest pioneer home in West Pasco County. And it was Mr. Baker, Mr. Samuel Baker was, and his wife Elizabeth. If you'll notice that it was built, it said like ships, but I never saw a ship built like that. The boards and the ships that I always went around sideways, but they said that didn't have any, what do you call them, studs and all that stuff in behind. They just built the board straight up. And there was not much reinforcing in the building. But it is, it's been restored now, and they have also added a pardon?
They're still there.
Oh, yeah, yes, it is, and it's gone through a lot of storms. But they have also added a kitchen, an authentic looking kitchen, which is, I couldn't understand when they made them take when it was restored, they made them take the fireplace out. And I said, well, I know they had to have some kind of heat in here, and usually they had a thimble for a heater. If they didn't, they made them remove the fireplace that was in there after it was remodeled. And but they said the only heat they had was in the kitchen. And they had a thimble for the stove to go out in the kitchen. And it is quite authentic, and it's a very interesting place to visit. And any of you that haven't been there, I know Martha hasn't. She serves with the Questers Den. There is one of their docents a lot of times. But it's certainly an interesting place to go and to see the way things were furnished and with the beds and cribs and so forth. You know, people talk about how hard, the hardship, but to me, I think people, it was pretty comfortable the way. Of course, I like snuggling, turning up the air when it gets cold now, but you just had to dress for it. Oh, when we were picking out the pictures to show, Midge got a big kick out of this. That sign is what made us choose this picture to show how bare it was around the orange lake there, and a few houses standing in the back. One, I think, I don't know if it's the Hermanson house. Hello, Mr. Larry, how you doing? I think Martha Williams' son owns that now. And I asked him for information as to who owned it and who built it and what year and so forth. But like me, he waited till the last minute, and I still don't have any information. But Midge and I found that the Drafts and the Hermansons, and the one with the little, I don't know, windows out front, is that an upstairs?
Yeah, that's upstairs.
Bedroom?
Well, they used it as a nursery, but it connects it, 2 bedrooms are upstairs, and they're connected, one was by like a sun porch. I think it was used probably as a, sun porch, because it's got windows all around.
I know when Sam bought it, how long has he had it, Martha? Okay,
Yeah, before he was married.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Oh,
didn't.
yeah, he had it, yes.
I remember when he had it
Restored, but
he did not remodel.
No, he didn't change the
Change
inside,
it.
it was all on the outside, and very little in this side.
Well, I understand you can do that in restorations, but not if you want to put it on the historical registration. I don't think you can do that. The little community church has been a historical place in Fort Ridgey for many years. It was built in 1906, and it served as a school, a community center, and a church. And it was built in 1906, and it's still there, and it serves as a community church to this day. Now, this is the Warner Building. I think that's the one you and I were looking for a minute ago. It
Yeah.
looks like it's brick. We
Yeah.
couldn't figure that out because the Snell building is, but anyway, the Grays, had a market in there, the Central Market. And, I think the Grays came in 1913, I believe it was. Well, in checking these records, I find that, it's kind of hard to pinpoint a date because one book and one newspaper article will say 1925 and another one 26 and another one 27. So it's kind of hard to. I guess all of you know that the Grays have been around. I know of 4 generations. I don't know. Mr. Frank Gray, he served as, he served as mayor in Fort Ridgett. And then one of his sons, Bill, served as mayor in Fort Ridgett. And, so they've been around a long time. We were talking a while back that they were wondering if any of the daughters were still here, and I talked to both of them and tried to get this picture. So they, Carol and, Susan are still here. And now the gazebo here, it was, over Sims' boathouse at one time, but it was used as a bandstand. And I don't know what year it was built, but I don't think Sims built his home here until 1916, about 1916. So probably sometime in that era, before the 20s, that this was built. But in it was moved, it served as a band shell. The bandstand, I guess they got it, was added in 1922. The gazebo was moved to Circle Boulevard in front of the Historical Society in 1982 and was refurbished by the Newport Ridgett Rotary Club.
Where's that situated?
Right here.
Around here. Sorry, the gazebo. Oh, wait a second.
Yes, it used to be down on the waterfront. And here's the little community building that was popular for so many years, but I understand it was so termite ridden that they finally had to tear it down. Now this is Gene Saracen's home in Jasmine. Somebody told me not, was Martin on it?
Judy Case.
Judy Case, that's right, that's right. All right. Well, in looking at the Christmas lights, I tried to find it, but they have painted it different colors, and I couldn't recognize it at Christmas time when we were going on Jasmine Point. But that was his home, and it hadn't been changed. The facade hasn't been changed hardly at all in the last, well, at all. It has been painted in its different colors and all. Gene Sayers has been popular with the golfers in the area, and we had a display in the library until just recently, but we took some of the things. We took the golf club with his name, and he said somebody gave her that spoon that had his name on it, that it came in cereal boxes, wasn't it?
No, it says, man, it's Thomas Man.
Oh, the spoon is Thomas.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. But I did not know that Gene Saracen had written a book until my son gave me that one. And this is a picture of Gene Saracen and Thomas Mann at the golf course. When I was a little kid, they had a 9-hole course around Orange Lake, and Gene Saracen tried to get some of us kids together to teach us to play golf. But I that played paper dolls, pine trees, and all that sort of thing. And I had to play golf, and I still don't like to play golf.
Well, didn't they build a golf course now?
Yes, they did. They had a big one
Yeah.
out in Jasmine Point,
Yeah.
between where the homes are and what is now 19.
Yeah.
That was Old Post Road at that time. And that's where it was. In fact, I think in this book of Now and Then, it shows a lot of diagrams that Kathleen Stroke put in here where things were, and it's very interesting to look it up. I'm trying to explain to people how the train came into town and where it ran and so forth. And it's kind of hard to explain the way things are located today. But Gene Saracen was, he was hired to come here to be the golf pro out at the big golf course that was out here. And we have pictures in the library, if you want to look at them later, that show pictures of the golf course and the clubhouse and all that. And it's very nice. Of course, they didn't do anything on a chintzy scale, I would say. It was all on the grand scale, all the things that they did. But then that old bus came and kind of put a crimp in all of these different things. And this one is, this house is still standing. This was the home of Oscar and Herms, and he was a horticulturist that came here from Ohio. The house now is painted white, but there's not so many trees around it, but you can see it when you go down Grand Boulevard. But he came here from Ohio and stayed with my grandparents in this house in Fort Ridgey in 1910, I think it was. And this was one of the Clark's daughters, and her name was Eugene. And Mr. Herms liked her, but apparently she didn't like him, but Grandma did. So she encouraged him, but he went back north, and then about a year later he came back, and they were married in 1912. But the property had been given to Ruby by, she had been married to one of the Nix sons, and he was, when Grandpa Nix was a U.S. Marshal, he had went out to try to arrest he had to go out to arrest a man that was accused of murder, and his son went with him and was shot and killed. In fact, he shot clear through the son, and the bullet landed in my grandfather's shoulder, and it stayed there too. But Ruby had been married to him in a very short time, they didn't have any children. So when, after his son died, Sheldon, Grandpa Nix gave his widow the property there on Grand Boulevard. And she, after they were married, they built the home. They built the home there, and Uncle Oscar was a horticulturist. Hi, very fine, thank you. Not that formal. But he was a horticulturist, and he planted, one of the things that a lot of people know about is the Moon Lake Dew Ranch. And Uncle Oscar planted all of the plants out there, and the big, tall Washingtonian palms that were around Fort Ridgey, he planted all those. He did a lot of the landscaping. He was vice president of, second vice president of the bank, and he was on the city council. He was quite active, and he was a charter member of the community church over here too. So they have two daughters still living in this area. One's in Holiday and one's in Wickywack. Mom, it's a bad day. I said, oh. Oh, one thing I forgot to tell you about, on philosophy. One year, he and Harriet Tickner, they used to have what they call a home demonstration agent. And he and Miss Harriet Tickner, she lived in Port Richey, they went to put a display in Madison Square Garden in New York, and they won first place. Now, can you imagine going